Something extraordinary is unfolding in the heart of the Vatican movement, so subtle yet so powerful it could reshape the future of faith for billions. A man, once overlooked, is rising through the sacred halls, his name whispered in awe from the crowded streets of Jakarta to the quiet cloisters of Rome. Father Daniel Santoso, a priest from Indonesia, is no ordinary cleric. He carries a vision that could either unite the world's believers or spark a firestorm among those who guard tradition. Is he the chosen one to lead the church into a new era? Or is he walking a dangerous path, one that could unravel everything he's fought for? Stay with us. This story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about faith and power. Daniel Santoso was born on a humid morning in June 1965, in a small fishing village on the coast of Java, Indonesia. His parents were simple rice farmers, their lives tied to the rhythms of the land and the tides. Faith was their anchor, a blend of Catholic devotion and the quiet spirituality of their ancestors. Young Daniel was different from the start. He didn't just pray, he felt the words, as if they carried the weight of the world. At 7, he would sit under the banyan tree, reading borrowed Bible pages to the village children, his voice soft but commanding, his dark eyes alive with something unexplainable. Neighbors called him the little prophet, half in jest, half in wonder. They didn't know then that this boy would one day stand at the center of the world's oldest institution. By 15, Daniel had left the village for a Jesuit-run school in Jakarta. His teachers saw brilliance in his questions, a mind that wrestled with theology as easily as it memorized scripture. He wasn't just smart, he was alive with compassion, spending weekends in the city's slums, sharing meals with street vendors and listening to their stories. His classmates teased him for his patched clothes, but he laughed it off, saying, "God doesn't care about my shoes." That humility, that refusal to chase status, would become his hallmark. At 18, he entered the seminary, a decision that surprised no one who knew him. Ordained in 1990 at 25, Father Daniel was a priest who didn't preach from a distance. He walked barefoot through flooded villages, carried rice sacks to orphanages, and wept openly when a parishioner died. His sermons weren't lectures, they were conversations, filled with questions that made people rethink their faith. In the 1990s, Indonesia was a nation of contrasts, vibrant, chaotic, and often violent. Religious tensions simmered between Christians, Muslims, and Hindus, and political unrest shook the country. Father Daniel didn't shy away. He organized interfaith meetings in community halls, sitting cross-legged with imams and monks, his laughter breaking the ice. He spoke of love, not dogma, and his words carried weight. People listened, not just Catholics, but everyone. By 2000, his reputation had spread beyond Indonesia. Bishops in Rome took notice, and whispers of his name reached the Vatican. Who was this young priest who could draw thousands to a muddy field for mass? Who could calm a crowd with a single raised hand? In 2005, a turning point came. Pope John Paul II, nearing the end of his papacy, invited Daniel to Rome for a theological symposium. At 40, he was the youngest speaker, standing before cardinals and scholars in a borrowed cassock. His talk, it wasn't about doctrine. It was about people, about the widow selling mangoes to feed her children, about the fishermen who prayed for safety before dawn. He asked the room, if the church cannot weep with them, what is it for? The audience was silent, then erupted in applause. Some cardinals shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward, captivated. That day, Daniel Santoso became more than a priest who became a voice the Vatican couldn't ignore. But Rome is a city of shadows as much as light. Power moves quietly here, through whispered alliances and sealed letters. When Pope Benedict XVI appointed Daniel as auxiliary bishop of Jakarta in 2008, it raised eyebrows. Why send a man with no political ambition to one of Asia's most turbulent dioceses? Some saw it as a test, others a way to keep him far from Rome's inner circles. Daniel didn't care. He traded the bishop's residence for a small apartment, rode a battered motorcycle through Jakarta's traffic, and spent evenings praying with street children. His flock grew, not just in numbers but in devotion. They called him Bapa Daniel, Father Daniel, a title that carried love, not formality. Then, in 2015, everything changed. Pope Francis, the revolutionary pontiff from Argentina, named Daniel Archbishop of Jakarta. At 50, he was one of the youngest archbishops in the world, overseeing a diocese of millions in a country where Catholics were a minority. The appointment wasn't just a promotion, it was a statement. Francis, known for shaking up the church, saw in Daniel a kindred spirit, a man who lived the gospel, not just preached it. The two met privately in Rome, their conversation lasting hours. No one knows what was said, but when Daniel emerged, his eyes were bright with purpose. He returned to Indonesia with a mission, to make the church a home for everyone, not just the faithful. As Archbishop, Daniel didn't just lead, he transformed. He opened church doors to refugees fleeing violence in nearby provinces, turning parishes into shelters. He spoke out against corruption, his voice steady but firm, even when local officials threatened him. In 2017, when riots erupted in Jakarta over religious divisions, Daniel walked into the chaos unarmed, his white cassock stained with mud. He knelt between shouting crowds, praying silently until the noise faded. The next day, newspapers called it a miracle. His critics called it reckless, but for millions, it was proof that faith could still move mountains. The Vatican watched closely. In 2019, Pope Francis made a decision that stunned the Catholic world. He elevated Daniel to the rank of cardinal. At 54, Cardinal was among the youngest in the College of Cardinals, a group of men tasked with advising the Pope and, one day, choosing his successor. The red hat came with whispers, some of admiration, others of suspicion. Traditionalists in Rome grumbled. Daniel's ideas were too radical, they said. He spoke too much of love, too little of law. His tears during Mass, his habit of hugging strangers, these were unbecoming of a cardinal, they argued. But his supporters saw something else, a man who could bring the Church closer to the people it claimed to serve. By 2022, Daniel's influence had grown beyond Asia. He was invited to speak at global conferences from Nairobi to New York. His words broadcast to millions. He didn't talk like a politician or a scholar. He spoke like a friend. His stories rooted in the struggles of ordinary people. He challenged the Church to face the modern world: poverty, climate change, migration, not with rules but with compassion. His speeches went viral, shared by young Catholics and non-Catholics alike. On social media, hashtags like #BAPA Daniel trended, his face appearing on posters in villages and cities alike. But with fame came danger. In Rome, power is never gained without enemies. The Vatican is a labyrinth of loyalty and betrayal, where every decision is scrutinized, every alliance questioned. Daniel's rise didn't go unnoticed by those who preferred a church of rigid tradition. Some cardinals, particularly from Europe, saw him as a threat, a man who could tip the scales toward a future they didn't want. They whispered of his softness, his lack of respect for protocol. Others, though, saw him as the future. Pope Francis, now in his late 80s, began leaning on Daniel more heavily. In 2024, he appointed him as his special envoy to a global summit on faith and peace in Brazil, a role that put Daniel on the world stage. The message was clear: Francis trusted him above all others. But why now? Why Daniel? The answer lies in the whispers that have grown louder in recent months. Pope Francis, frail but resolute, has faced questions about his health. His public appearances have dwindled, his voice softer, his steps slower. Rumors of resignation, unheard of since Benedict XVI stepped down in 2013, have begun to swirl. Some say Francis is preparing the Church for a new leader, one who will carry his vision forward. And Daniel's name is at the top of the list. His role in Brazil, his leadership in the dicastery for interreligious dialogue, his growing popularity all point to a man being groomed for something greater. But is he ready? And is the Church? Not everyone is convinced. The College of Cardinals is a divided house. On one side are those like Daniel, who believe the Church must evolve, embrace the marginalized, dialogue with other faiths, and confront global crises. On the other are traditionalists who want to return to doctrine, to a Church that stands firm against the tides of modernity. Cardinal Giuseppe Romano, a powerful figure from Italy, leads this conservative faction. At 72, Romano is a scholar of canon law, his speeches filled with warnings about diluting the Church's teachings. To him, Daniel's approach is dangerous, a slippery slope toward chaos. Romano has allies, men who control votes in the conclave, men who see Daniel as an outsider, too emotional, too unpredictable. Then there's Cardinal Aisha Nkrumah from Ghana, another rising star. At 60, she represents Africa's growing Catholic population, her voice a blend of tradition and progress. She shares Daniel's passion for the poor but is cautious about his bold reforms. If the cardinals seek a compromise, Aisha could emerge as a rival, her calm demeanor a contrast to Daniel's fire. The third contender, Cardinal Hans Müller from Germany, is a wild card. At 68, he's a diplomat, skilled at navigating Vatican politics. His name is mentioned quietly, a safe choice for those who fear Daniel's vision is too radical. The stakes are higher than ever. The next pope will inherit a world in turmoil, war, inequality, and a church struggling to stay relevant. Daniel's vision is clear, a faith that listens, that heals, that crosses borders. But his enemies are circling. In early 2025, a leaked document from the Vatican hinted at a campaign to discredit him. Anonymous letters accused him of bending doctrine, of prioritizing popularity over truth. Daniel dismissed the claims with a smile, saying, "Truth doesn't need my defense. It stands alone." But the damage was done. Whispers became headlines, and headlines became doubts. Back in Indonesia, Daniel's homeland is watching. The country's 10 million Catholics see him as a hero, a son of the soil who could one day lead from Rome. His visits home are like festivals: crowds gather, children wave flags, and churches overflow. In 2024, when he returned to Java for a youth rally, 50,000 people came to hear him speak. He stood on a wooden stage, his voice breaking as he told the story of a girl he met in a refugee camp. Her faith stronger than her hunger. The crowd wept with him. For them, Daniel isn't just a cardinal, he's a symbol of hope in a nation scarred by division. But hope is a fragile thing. In Rome, the air is thick with tension. Pope Francis' latest encyclical Cor Mundi, Heart of the World, calls for a church that embraces all, regardless of creed or status. Daniel's response was electric. In a rare public address, he spoke of a faith that doesn't judge, that walks with the broken, that dares to love beyond walls. His words were a direct challenge to the traditionalists, and they didn't go unanswered. Cardinal Romano issued a statement, subtle but sharp, warning against misguided compassion. The battle lines were drawn. What happens next is anyone's guess. If Pope Francis steps down, the conclave will be a crucible. Daniel Santoso, the boy from Java, could become the first Asian pope, a seismic shift for a church rooted in European tradition. His election would signal a new chapter, one where the global south takes center stage, where faith is lived, not just preached, but the road is treacherous. The Vatican's power games are relentless, and Daniel's enemies are as cunning as they are powerful. A single misstep could end his chances. Yet Daniel doesn't play those games. He prays in the mornings, walks Rome's streets at dusk, and writes letters to his old parish in Jakarta. He carries no ambition, only a fire that burns brighter with each challenge. His supporters see a saint, his critics a rebel. Both might be right. The world is watching, waiting for the smoke to rise from the Sistine Chapel. Will it herald a new dawn, or will it mark the end of a dream? One thing is certain. Daniel Santoso is no longer just a name. He is a force, a question, a possibility that could change everything. His story began in a village, but it doesn't end there. From the slums of Jakarta to the marble halls of Rome, Daniel has carried a message. Faith is not a throne, but a bridge. He's crossed that bridge with fishermen, with refugees, with skeptics and believers alike. Now, as the Vatican stands at a crossroads, his steps echo louder than ever. Is he the answer to a divided church, or is he a spark that could ignite a storm? The truth is coming, and it will shake the world. Thank you for joining us. If this story moved you, share it, talk about it, and stay with us for what's next. The future is unwritten, but it's closer than you think.